Day Wanna Wanga. Oh, and spoilers. Welcome to the channel, I'm Hayes, I'll talk movies all day, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today, I want to talk about Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi, the 1983 third and final movie in the original Star Wars trilogy. Now, like all Star Wars films except the ones that came after this, Return is generally a well-liked, fondly remembered movie. So now, I'm gonna tell you why it's trash. The movie starts off with making you read. It's bad enough I gotta read some of these Facebook posts before the movie starts, but Star Wars takes that extra step and makes the words get smaller as they go up the screen. So now I gotta keep pausing just so I don't strain my eyes. And after all that, I swear they don't never put nothing worthwhile in them things. Cause it says Luke returned to Tatooine to rescue Han and the Empire's rebuilding the Death Star. Okay, cool. But that is literally the opening scenes. Like what, you didn't think we can tell the Death Star was being rebuilt when showing the Death Star being rebuilt? And they spend the longest amount of time on that BS rescue mission, and we're going to talk about that, by the way. But yeah, I think it's pretty obvious Luke went to Tatooine to rescue Han. At this point, you may as well just write up the whole damn movie and put it in the opening crawl. Also, from the clutches of the vile gangster Jabba the Hutt, let's not forget Han owed him money, and it was Luke and Leia that kept delaying Han from paying him back, and now you want to call Jabba a vile gangster? Fam, Luke tried to kill his own dad as Jedi initiation. You don't get to talk. Anyway, so the Death Star is being rebuilt, but I swear you never see anyone doing any actual rebuilding. Were all the construction staff on holiday or something? So Darth Vader tells the commander that he's slacking and the commander says that he needs more men. Vader then says that the Emperor is coming, and that's when the commander gets shook. Now I get that they're trying to big up the Emperor, but why is anyone still getting brave with Darth Vader? They do know why they go through so many commanding officers, right? So let's talk about Luke's plan to rescue Han from the situation he got him in to begin with. Luke sends C-3PO and R2-D2 to deliver a message to Jabba the Hutt. R2-D2 said their instructions were to give the message to Jabba the Hutt directly. Okay, but why would Bib Fortuna take a couple of droids that showed up out of nowhere straight to the big boss? Are you dumb? And we're supposed to believe that he became the new daimyo after Jabba? Really? Anyway, the message was that Luke wanted to come chat with Jabba about letting Han go, and as a token of good faith, he gifted him the droids. So far so good. But before we go ahead, let's just take a moment to appreciate that Jabba the Hutt is an equal opportunities employer. He was doing diversity in the workplace long before Hollywood started trying to score woke points. Now Leia turns up disguised as a bounty hunter with Chewie as a pretend prisoner and apparently entered the palace using violence, so Jabba had every right to fight back but didn't, and they want to call him the vile gangster? But for real though, do they really believe this little munchkin captured a whole ass Wookiee, didn't cuff his hands, and just walked him into a crime lord's lair? Are you dumb? You know, it's a good thing he pulled down his face guard, because we never would have guessed it was Lando Calrissian otherwise. In case you couldn't tell, I was being sarcastic. Well, kinda. I mean, clearly Lando pulling down the face guard was for the audience's benefit, but being in such a crowded place, why would he risk giving away his identity? Or did he? How did he get a job at Jabba's palace without anyone seeing his face? Actually, to be fair, they probably hire a lot of people who prefer to keep their identity a secret, like Boba Fett for example. I imagine they take the privacy of staff and contractors very seriously. Jabba must be a very trusting person, yet they want to call him the vile gangster. Okay. And also, let's take a moment to appreciate how Jabba lets people sleep over at his palace after the party. It's probably quite difficult to get transport home that late on Tatooine. I mean, this is before Uber. Anyway, the little munchkin bounty hunter turned out to be none other than Princess Leia, who sneaks into the main room at night to free Han Solo. My question is, what happened to the arm straps? Does the carbonite disintegrate arm straps? And if so, why just arm straps? Why not everything else? Shouldn't Han be completely naked by now? So Jabba catches Leia trying to free Han and is all like, listen, yeah, man's just gonna feed you to the Banthas, isn't it? You see, the thing is, Jabba had set clear boundaries which they repeatedly violated, so of course at this point, he's gonna have to choose violence. But even still, he chooses something that helps to preserve the natural wildlife of the planet, and they wanna call this guy a vile gangster. Nah, you taking a piss, fam. Now Jabba does turn Leia into a sexy slave, which, honestly, yeah, there's no excuses for that one. I mean, everybody has their kinks, I guess, but where would you even get a sexy slave outfit from at such short notice? Did they just happen to have one lying around and it just happened to fit? And why does a sexy slave outfit even exist? This movie legit went from treating the audience like idiots to showcasing somebody's depraved fantasy. Anyway, Luke turns up and force chokes the guards completely unprovoked, manipulates Bib Fortuna, threatens Jabba the Hutt, and kills Emily. By the way, Emily is what I've decided the Rancor was named. Luke could have used the Force to push Emily back before shutting the gate. Instead, he murdered her in cold blood. So of course Jabba is angry. How would you feel if somebody broke into your house, threatened you, and then killed your pet? So instead of feeding Han and Chewie to the Banthas, now he's gonna feed them to the Sarlacc. Note, Jabba's still trying to make sure everybody eats. And Luke is still issuing threats. Now let's take a moment to appreciate that even on his barge ship, even after he has been angered, Jabba makes sure that his staff and contractors have a fun workplace environment. But they want to call this guy a vile gangster. Make it make sense. That said, there was no reason for Bib Fortuna to put his hand on the back of Leia after Jabba pulled her in. That's the type of thing that gets you Me Too'd. So now there's a big action scene where Boba Fett gets taken out like a bitch, Jabba gets choked out by a mostly naked woman, so yeah, that was definitely somebody trying to live out their depraved fantasy. Luke kills loads of people and eventually leaves the dune with a pile of bodies and debris. On a stolen barge, by the way. But let's come back a little bit. Luke used his lightsaber to kill Jabba's guards. Luke got his lightsaber from R2-D2, who spat it out into the air for Luke to catch. Ipso facto, R2-D2 had the lightsaber the whole time. So, what was the original plan? Because from the moment Luke turned up, nothing he said or did would have ensured he would be in close proximity of R2. And even with Lando on the inside, assuming he had secret radio comms with Luke, there's still no way he could have known that Jabba was going to send Han and Chewie to the Sarlacc and also fly out on his barge to watch them get eaten, which just so happened to be where R2 was stationed. You see, R2 and C-3PO were gifted to Jabba the Hutt, so he could have done anything he wanted with them. He could have sent them super far away. He could have had their memories wiped. He could have even had them destroyed. The fact that they ended up where they did, which just so happened to be convenient for Luke, wasn't because Luke planned it that way. He got lucky. Also, the way R2 and C-3PO fell from the barge, they wouldn't have gone into the sand that deep. If anything, they should both be broken. Anyway, after they committed crimes against Jabba, they fly away. Luke goes to Dagobah and Han tells Luke, "Thanks, now I owe you one." No, Han, you don't. You really don't. So Yoda is 900 years old and has been training Jedi for 800 of those years. So quick math, he's been training Jedi since he was 100-ish years old. The ish because there's a few years between Empire and Return. Anyway, that's all well and good until we get to The Mandalorian, where Grogu is 50 years old. Now clearly the little green man species live a long time, so it makes sense that Grogu is 50 and still looks and acts like a baby. But Grogu at 50 is the equivalent of a 1-year-old or maybe 2-year-old human. So if Yoda has been training Jedi since he was 100, that's the equivalent of a 4-year-old. So now we're supposed to believe that Yoda has been teaching Jedi from when he himself was still in primary school. Really? Now I know there are these prodigies that at a young age have already become a master at something, but considering how dumb Yoda has been, I don't believe he was one of them. Yoda at 100 was using the Force to throw stones on the floor so he can have an excuse to look up the teacher's skirts. He was not training Jedi. When Luke asks Yoda if Vader is his father, Yoda's first response was to try to avoid the question, and when he does confirm, Yoda says it was unexpected. How? How is this unexpected? Luke finding out that Vader is his daddy seems like the type of thing you could very easily anticipate happening. Obi-Wan appears to Luke after Yoda dies, and Luke asks him why he told him Vader killed his dad. And Obi-Wan says what he told him was true from a certain point of view. No, Obi-Wan, that was a fucking lie. Also, Obi tells Luke that when he met Anakin, he took it upon himself to train him as a Jedi. But by the time he gets to the prequels, we find out that was a fucking lie. Also, Yoda tells Luke he don't need more training. Obi tells him he gotta face Darth Vader again. Now both those guys were trying to stop him from facing Darth Vader in Empire. Now they're practically pushing him out the door. I get there's been a few years between and he's probably been training in that time, but it'd be nice to know what exactly he's been doing, because I swear Luke does the exact same Jedi moves he did in Empire. Remember how George Lucas said that he changed the whole Han shot first thing to be clear that Han only kills in self-defense? Also, Luke kills a stormtrooper by pushing him off a speed bike into a tree. That's such a brutal way to kill someone when you're supposed to be the good guy. That man died slowly, painfully, and alone. So when the Ewok pokes the sleeping Leia with a spear and then Leia woke up suddenly and shouted at the Ewok could have stabbed Leia and claimed trespass in self-defense. Also, the two stormtroopers fired a couple of warning shots and then tried to take Leia alive, but then Leia murdered them both, and yet this Ewok still thinks he's better off with her? Are you dumb? Palpatine asks Vader if he's sure his son is with the rebels on Endor, and Vader says, "I have felt him, my master." Mate, you know how many inappropriate jokes there are in that? Let me just move on. So Luke could have used his Jedi magic to make all the Ewoks back up and set himself and his friends free. Why is he acting calm all of a sudden when they're literally trying to eat him? So remember how Jabba the Hutt just so happened to have a sexy slave costume that just so happened to fit Princess Leia? Turns out the Ewoks just so happen to have an innocent village girl dress that also just so happens to fit Princess Leia. So do all places in the galaxy far, far away just happen to keep spare outfits around just in case Princess Leia shows up? I mean, she's a princess, so it kinda makes sense, right? But if that's the case, then why didn't the Ewok from earlier recognize who she is? My guess is whoever wrote this probably just thought nobody would notice. After the Ewoks set them free, R2-D2 zaps one of them. That's just rude. Why is it when family members are revealed, no one ever asks for actual proof? It's just feelings. Watch me walk up to Will Smith talking about, "I searched my feelings and you're really my dad. Now you will give all your money to me." But here's the thing, I was gonna let the Luke and Leia kiss slide because they didn't know that they were related, but then Leia went and said, "Somehow, I've always known." That means she purposefully molested her own brother. She all the way wrong for that. So not only did Han shoot first because he's a cold-blooded killer, not only did Han pressure Leia into a physical relationship because he's a sex offender, Han is also the jealous type. The Ewok told them that there was a secret entrance on the other side of the ridge. Then when they get to the back, the Ewok runs off and steals a speed bike, making most of the guards follow him. Bear in mind, they didn't even know about the Ewoks when they went to Endor, which means they didn't have a plan, they got lucky. Also, what exactly did C-3PO say to the Ewoks that got them to risk their lives for a cause they apparently knew nothing about moments prior? I know they think he's a god, but it's also against his programming to impersonate a deity, so either C-3PO is lying to them about his spiritual status, or maybe Luke is using his Jedi mind tricks to force the teddy bear looking people to fight and die for them. Either way, the rebels are not good people. General Akbar said to prepare to jump to hyperspace on his mark, but they jumped to hyperspace before his mark. Are you dumb? Also, when they get there, they find out real quick the shield is still up. Of course it's still up. The Endor crew never told them it was down. This is what happens when you jump to hyperspace before you're told. This guy says, "Bring those two down here." Which two? From where they are, they can only see 3PO. So the Ewoks fired a whole bunch of arrows at the stormtroopers and not one of those arrows hit the rebels who were right next to them. Cause you know they weren't even aiming. So the Bothans stole plans from the Empire about the new Death Star. Turns out it was Palpatine's plan all along to lure them into a spot where they can be easily killed. Good plan. Except, why give them real information? He could have got them to believe the new Death Star was somewhere else, set up a decoy and have them killed there. That way, if anything goes wrong, which of course it does, they won't know where the real new Death Star is. Are you dumb? Why does the Galactic Empire insist on having access ports that R2-D2 can use? I know they have R2 units as well, it just doesn't make sense to have ports that link to so many important parts of the operation easily accessible by common house robots. Anyway, R2 gets shot and Han says he could hotwire it. So the whole time they were like, "R2, we need you," making him risk his circuit board crossing the war zone. Han could have just hotwired it. Are you dumb? Turns out he couldn't hotwire it because, he is dumb, but the point is he thought he could and he should have tried that first. Now the Ewoks had some pretty cool tricks with the tree trunks, but they wouldn't have had time to set those up after the rebels came, which means those traps were there before. Why? Now, I'm sure they have all kinds of dangers on Endor, but would any of them require a double battering ram? That high up? And all those rolling logs? What exists on Endor where that's a necessity? And just so happen to be near where the Empire set up base? Really? There's a couple of times when Luke might have actually killed Darth Vader in anger and possibly joined the dark side had Palpatine just kept his mouth shut. Okay, so now look at this explosion, and now look how far Han ran from the shield generator. Han and the rebels should be dead, or at least severely burned. So remember how Lando Calrissian and his crew jumped to hyperspace too early and had to contend with the Empire's fighter jets until Han blew up the shield generator? The fact that they survived all this time in what was supposed to be a galactic Empire ambush goes to show once again the Empire are not a threat. Luke begs his dad to help him after he chopped his hand off. Vader does help him because in the end he is a good role model. So none of these guys are going to question why Luke Skywalker is dragging Darth Vader around? Also, what actually killed Darth Vader? I mean, I know he's more machine now than man, but surely the vital circuits are not stored in his hand. I mean, I guess possibly all the electricity from Palpatine caused some kind of overloads, but can we get an explanation, please? The George Lucas special edit ends with a celebration scene showing all the different parts of the galaxy and how they're all happy the Empire is gone. But if that many people hated the Empire, shouldn't there have been way more people in the Rebel Alliance? These guys really just sat back and let a small band of idiots do all the fighting. Even the Gungans didn't help out, and aren't they supposed to be great warriors? Yet they did nothing this whole time? Really? There's one Ewok playing drums on the helmets of dead stormtroopers. That is so cruel. And these are the good guys, yeah? And I know this has probably been said before. Well, to be honest, there's a possibility a lot of what I said has been said before. But changing Anakin Skywalker to Hayden Christensen makes no sense. Neither Yoda or Obi-Wan de-aged after death, so what's so special about Anakin? Actually, to be fair, you don't know the power of the dark side. Alright, so before I get into my final thoughts, if you liked this movie, check out these movies. They're all 80s sci-fi movies, and just like Star Wars, they all involve alien creatures that go to another planet and cause trouble. Well, apart from maybe Howard the Duck. To be honest, it's been such a long time since I've seen it. All I can remember is that it was good, and it's a travesty it hasn't been rebooted yet. So here's the thing about Return of the Jedi. It feels like a movie that had to be made to complete a trilogy, but at the same time, it really didn't have to be made at all. And perhaps that's because it spends a lot of time on what is scientifically known as faff. Of the 2 hours and 15 minutes, about 30 minutes is spent on rescuing Han, about 10 minutes of Yoda and Obi making up excuses for their lies, about 20 plus minutes hanging out with furries, and then the main part of the movie begins. Anyway, because of the bombshell reveal in Empire, in order to complete the trilogy, Luke had to confront Vader, which does happen. But what we don't get is Luke's journey from realizing he's been lied to accepting what needs to be done. Instead, we're supposed to just accept that Luke completed his Jedi training in between the two movies, but at no point during that time brought up the fact that Yoda and Obi-Wan withheld pertinent information, and only brings it up when the cameras are on. Really? We also don't get Vader's journey. Dude went from choking out staff just because they questioned him to letting people undermine his authority to his face. So what happened to Vader in between Empire and Return? What caused him to become a lot more chill, aside from it being convenient to the plot? And even the whole thing about the new Death Star kind of felt like they just ran out of ideas. The old Death Star didn't work, so let's rebuild the exact same thing, except this time we're gonna leak the plans about where it is and how to destroy it. Yeah, I'm not sure they thought that one through. Now I know there's a lot of Star Wars theories about how it draws parallels to real world historical events, and maybe some of those are maybe true. But ultimately, what I think all the original Star Wars movies were trying to do is just tell an epic tale of good versus evil in an intergalactic setting. Perhaps trying to show that there's good and evil in all of us, and it's up to us which ones we focus our energies on. The metaphor of the Jedi seems to be choosing the routes that leads to you becoming the best version of yourself, even though that route could be long and difficult. Whereas the metaphor for the dark side seems to be choosing the routes that gets you what you want now, although that route would make you a terrible person. These are of course important things to consider as we make choices throughout our own lives, and I think that generally speaking these movies do hold to that, but only when you ignore the fact that the Jedi are very hypocritical. The three movies do a lot in terms of action, scale and storytelling, but I think it's fair to say that Return is the weakest link. Large parts of it feel like they really didn't know what to do, or maybe they were too worried about getting too deep with the good versus evil and life choices metaphors, so we get Ewoks instead. By the way, the Ewoks were Jar Jar Binks before Jar Jar Binks was Jar Jar Binks. What I'm saying is, although it does what it needed to do in terms of concluding the story, the path that it took to get there just seemed questionable. But that's what I think of Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. What do you think of Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi? Let me know down below, and while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe and drop a suggestion if you don't mind.